Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to be moving into a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what you want me to check out. If you'd like to submit your own special selection, you can find the link for that in the description. Today's special selection is, it's got some interesting names going on. Dimitri sends The Comet is Coming, Final Eclipse. And it took me a second to figure out which one was the band and which one was the song title. The band is called The Comet is Coming. It gives the link. They're a UK-based trio which finally combines jazz and electronic music with a myriad of other genres. Excited to share this with everyone. Enjoy. Now, the album is called Death to the Planet, which pairs very nicely with The Comet is Coming and kind of also Final Eclipse. Like, it's all just creating this visual package for me. Let's dive into this, see what's going on. The Comet is Coming, Final Eclipse, full version. Yeah, so it actually had a bit of a pickup there. Although, actually, it could be that snare hit is actually the offbeat. Yeah, so now we have two instruments. Yeah, so the snares are on the offbeat, which was confusing because that was our only rhythmic pulse in the beginning. Interesting. Very dancey. And it's interesting to use what I think is a sax as a rhythmic instrument. Not what I was expecting from a band called The Comet is Coming. I like how they use that growing sound to indicate a change to the music. Oh, keeps going. We gotta drop this time. Ooh. Yeah, everything is just, it's highly rhythmic. Was that using intentional squeals from the sax as like harmonic overtones? Oh, the little wood blocks in the back. Getting a real gritty saxophone right here. recontextualizing this idea with a new atmosphere. Yeah, really digging in there. Yeah, we got something panning around in the back. Yeah, even the saxophone right here is switching between on beats and off beats. It has an irregular phrasing to it. Whoa. Hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of genres being incorporated and featured in this one track, and it really makes me intrigued about their other works. Is it going to be more like this, at least texturally, atmospherically, emotionally? This was very much dancey. I would say that the core underlying element to this is still electronic music. They do incorporate some jazz instrumentation to it, so we get some of that vocalization. A couple of these sections do remind me a little bit of swinginess, as far as even soloists, like even that hyper repetitive sax note where it just picks up one note and just plays around with it rhythmically. I've heard swing soloists do that before. Like that's not something brand new for this. So there is a jazzy overtone to what's going on here, but then there's also all sorts of like folky elements too, especially when we start getting into the rhythmic elements and some of the timbres of the drums, and where the different cultures that those are going to be coming from. So there's definitely a lot of stuff on top of this, but I feel like the core meat of this, it still obeys a lot of electronic music. And when I say I'm intrigued and I'm interested in what else they've done, I'm curious about this specific formula and how they might play around with it. Because, like I said, to me, this is still electronic music. There's other ideas coming in here, but structurally, sonically, this is electronic. And I'm curious if they ever flip that maybe they have the electronic inspiration provide overtones to a different foundation. Or maybe they do utilize this electronic structure, but they play around with the instrumentation of it or something like that, and create a different feel. That's what I would be looking for if I went ahead and checked out more of these guys and listened to more songs or checked out the album or something. I would be listening to how close their other tracks are to this formula. Because I think I was expecting something just a hair bit more progressive. And that's not to say that this isn't progressive, but it has so many trappings of electronic music that I think if we replaced a lot of this with samples, virtual instrumentation, and even change the timbre of some of the things, the vibe of the song's not going to change. I think it's going to be less unique sonically. Its identity is going to get skewed a little bit, pushed more towards something maybe a bit more forgettable. But otherwise, the danciness, the vibe, the atmosphere of the music isn't really going to change much. Utilizing a saxophone and utilizing all these acoustic drums, that all that does is present a new sonic identity. And I don't want to say that to take away anything in this song. I love this song. This was a jam, 100%. And I love how they're utilizing at least what it sounds like to be live instrumentation to create an electronic track. It reminds me a lot of man, who was that? I'm a bit upset that I'm not going to remember this. Oh, Anna Meredith. Yeah, Anna Meredith, where creates very electronic sounding music with acoustic instrumentation. There's a lot of really cool elements that go into the creation of something like this song. It's just I think I was in the wrong headspace coming into it based off of the description given, which not a slight on the selector either. They weren't wrong. I just expected things differently. I pulled the wrong information out of that description because what was this? Said it was they combined jazz and electronic music. Yeah, 100%. This was a combination of jazz and electronic. I was just expecting more jazzy elements, I think, and combinations of other genres, rather than being an electronic music that borrows the sound of some other ideas, which, again, there's nothing wrong with that. And I do like to talk about this from time to time, is that headspace and expectations are important. There's a lot of, I've heard people say that they went into an album and, hey, I'm guilty of this myself, gone into an album and hated it, possibly because it was associated with another band or it was a band's new album and they went in a different direction and they just, listen to it and say, what is this? This is not what I wanted. This is not, what the band is. And that's expectations. And it's very possible, it's happened to me. One of my favorite albums I hated when it came out. Human Abstract's Midheaven. But then you listen to it down the road and you know what you're in for this time. The expectations are set, your headspace is right, you're ready to meet it on its own grounds, and then it can really speak to you. I think that's just what happened here. I came in with the wrong expectations. But everything I've said so far is subjective. Let's get into some objective stuff with a little bit of subjectivity tossed in there. Let's look at what they're doing that is interesting, musically, sonically, atmospherically, whatever. First of all, I want to point out the rhythmic structure that is underneath this entire song. It probably started, I don't know, like a minute or so in. There were only a couple sections that it wasn't present in at all, and it was like a don't 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 don't, and it feels very clave like, but it isn't a clave. It's like the first bar of a clave repeating rather than the 2-bar phrase, and it really gives it this Latin feel to it that I don't think would have been present without it. And I really love that because a lot of electronic dance music is 4 on the floor. You get the heavy bass beat, boom, 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 and it's this constant, strict, rigid structure. Um, and even when we start looking at some of melody lines and a lot of electronic music, especially dance music, it's more straight notation, quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes. We don't really do anything dotted or triplets. We don't put anything fancy that would provide a little bit of um, some weight to one note or another. Everything is equal weighted, and having this sort of weighted rhythmic structure that underpins the entire song really helps give it a little bit of an extra dancey flair. It isn't modern dance. It's more of a traditional dance rhythmic pattern. And I love how that works underneath because it allows everything else to do whatever it wants. So we do see some of the snare hits and some of the hi-hat sounds be a bit more rigid and stick to your quarter notes and eighth notes. But then when we get stuff like the saxophone that comes in with that that rhythmic structure, it can play around with accented beats, whether it's on the beat or off the beat, even though it is doing straight what I think is eighth notes at the time. And it doesn't do them. I think it alternates between eighths and quarters, where it emphasizes quarters. Um, but it allows for those emphasized notes to be on or off the beat and still feel like it's lining up with something because of that irregular rhythmic structure that's going on underneath the song. So that's just a really great concept right there, and I love how it's brought in. They could have easily just stuck with four on the floor, like a lot of dance music goes for today, a lot of electronic music works with, and instead they incorporated uh, a really nice, flavorful rhythmic structure underneath everything. And like I said, it's not just for flavor, it helps allow everything else to express themselves in the way they want. And I mentioned that this isn't present everywhere. There is a section somewhere in the middle of the track. It's almost 7 minutes, so it's probably somewhere in the 3 to 4 minute range when that rhythm cuts out. And I think it's a bass guitar or something that's playing. It's a lower instrument. It's kind of a round sound, but it stops playing this rhythm, and we move into something that I think feels very structured. It doesn't have that loose feeling that the rest of the song embodies, and I think it provides great contrast to not only show these two sides of the song, but also to showcase why that simple idea is so necessary and how much that single idea has, how much power it has over the feeling of the song. And when it comes back in, it allows it to come back in even stronger. And honestly, I don't think most people are going to hear it. It is not the highlight of the piece. It's a one bar phrase. It's extremely repetitious. Even if you do hear it at the beginning, I think it does start out a bit isolated. It's one of the earlier layers to come in. It's going to be quickly forgotten because there's so many other things that are going to be played on top of it that you're going to be looking out for, and it doesn't change. It never calls attention back to itself, but it is so necessary to creating that feeling, that vibe that goes on in the song that gives it that rhythmic pulse. Um, Man, the saxophone. It is an experiment. I don't want to avant-garde. It's an avant-garde use of the saxophone, and I really enjoy that. The saxophone has a sound in a lot of pop culture. Cue Careless Whisper. If I put memes in my video, that's what I would do right there. Um, so like we have the sound for saxophones. We know what they sound like. We know the situations that we put that music to. Um, and I absolutely love that they're like, okay, we're gonna have a saxophone. It's gonna be our lead, but it's not gonna be playing these long, drawn out notes. It's not going to have any of that jazz saxophoniness to it, or any of the blues or any of the swing. It's going to be a pad. We're going to be playing it like a synth pad, and I absolutely love this subversion because of the interesting ways we get to hear it being utilized. First of all, It's extremely rhythmic. The first time we hear it for like a minute, minute and a half, everything written for it is highly rhythmic. And like I said, it introduces itself almost like a percussion instrument. It comes in with that hard repeating lick that emphasizes odd notes here and there. And it really doesn't get away from that. Even when we move from that riff to the next one, it's still a rhythmic one. It doesn't play around too much with notes. I think it has a range of maybe a third, but it's mostly about the rhythmic structure of how it bounces between these notes when it repeats notes. And it reminds me a lot of how Stuart Copeland uses his instruments, his more melodic instrumentation, his tuned instruments, and how he writes music for them. It's a very percussive mindset on it. And I absolutely love hearing that inverse of hearing an instrument we typically listen for in more of a melodic or harmonic situation and hearing it utilized in a percussive setting. It's really wonderful, at least to me, to hear music being pushed in all directions. And sometimes that means we get something like last week's Primitive Man, where they're really pushing beauty and emotional injection into sonic stuff. But in this case, it's not an overall tone that's being pushed to having the envelope pushed. It's an instrument and how it's utilized and how it sounds. Another instance of this is when we were getting, I don't remember what the rhythmic structure was or what the melody structure was. I'm pretty sure it was a single note on the saxophone, but out of the like 8 notes it hit, 2 or 3 of them were a squeak, which, if you've ever played a reeded instrument, especially starting out, the squeak is something you avoid. It's something you don't want. But it's interesting how it overlaid itself on top of it. And I don't know if that's possible with a single take. I've mentioned before I can't play reeded instruments, so I don't have any experience with this, but I've never heard it done before. And thinking about the physics of how reeded instruments create sound, I'm not sure it's possible, but I don't think it matters. What matters is the end result, especially looking at this as an electronic piece. It's not so much about the performance, it's about the end result of the song. And the fact that they utilize these squeaks on top of the notes it was supposed to be hitting reminded me so much of like pinch harmonics on a guitar. Getting that squeal, and it's not always a great sound by itself, but when used properly, when used intentionally, when paired with other harmonies, it's going to have a really nice effect. And that's exactly what happened here. They used the squeak of a reeded instrument as a harmonic element to a root note, and it just sounds so nice. I've never heard anyone do that before. And again, like I said, it took something unconventional, a sound that we don't usually associate with good playing, and turned it into something that was enjoyable, that fit the song. So yeah, just hearing the instrument push to its limits and doing new things with it, phenomenal. As far as the sax work goes, I put it in the same camp as Colin Stetson. Just the out of the box thinking on sax playing. I love it. I do like some of the coding that's going on in here too. You might not have noticed it, at least maybe until I pointed it out. Maybe you did pick up on it, but before that. But the song conditions you to hear when a change is coming. And I think they do that because they are not working within 16 bar phrases. The length of a section seems to be, at least to me, a bit random. I'm sure there's a reason for it or a pattern. Maybe they know they're doing like a 16, a 24, 24, 16, maybe. I don't know, but some sections were longer than others. I couldn't really nail down exactly why or which ones were getting longer repetitions or not. But when you hear that sound start out low on the left side and get louder and wash across to the right, oh, we're moving to the next section. Let me, focus out of what we're listening to right now and see what's being added, see what's being removed, see what's being changed. And I absolutely love that. It's a nice little, like I said, conditioning. It's a flag that says, "Hey, let me get your attention. We're doing something different in a second. Be ready for it." And it happens almost all the time. I think there are only a few sections. Even the drop utilize an extended sound of this sample or whatever. It used an extended version of it to go over instead of 4 bars, maybe 1 bar, several bars to be a part of the buildup. It's crescendo and panning across is part of the buildup that goes into the drop. And so, if you have any knowledge about electronic music and you know about the drop, things are going to get more intense. So, it's really cool that they paired the typical intensity rising that we're going to hear with the notes. The saxophone was playing notes faster and faster, quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes, doubling the speed of the notes every single bar or whatever. We also paired it with the signal that we've heard 4 or 5 times now that things are going to change. And I just love that combination. It's just a really neat way to go about doing that. And then I think the last thing, what I always talk about with this stuff, it's my big takeaway, and it's always what causes my jaw to drop when it comes to this sort of electronic music, and that is the production. Everything in here has a place in the sound sphere. It's all mixed expertly. There is width, there's depth, there's layer, there's verticality and horizontality to this song. And I love the way that it's utilized to place different instruments, to place priority of instruments. Some instruments are pushed down, not just in the mix as far as volume goes, but also pushed away in the spatial element of it as well. And it is just, it still blows my mind that people can place music almost in a 3D sphere around my head. It is something I don't grasp. I think I've explained this a few times before. I'm a music guy, not an audio guy. I like writing music. I like listening to music. I do not understand the craft of making music sound the way it does. And I'm getting there. I've started to put some production on my own works, and I have a bit of experience with basic production, just making things sound decent. But this element of placing things in a sphere is just, yeah, it's just bonkers, and it just continues to make my jaw drop and pushes me. This is what I'm aiming for as I continue to build my craft of production, is stuff like this, being able to place these notes behind me, in front of me, above me, below me. And I absolutely love how they go about doing all that. Also, those wood blocks, man, they came out of nowhere. Really makes me want to go back and listen and see if they were there the whole time. Because they came, like I said, they came out of nowhere. It's not like we entered into a brand new section and they were there. I think we just removed a couple of elements, and I noticed them, and I was like, hey, did we just pick up a rock and see this? But, was this sitting here the whole time? Makes me want to go back and really listen for it and see if it was present prior to that section. That's the little Easter eggs in production that I'm looking for these days. All right, so thank you to Dimitri. This was a treat. I do apologize for coming into it with the wrong mindset. Again, I'm going to take the blame on that. You're not wrong with your description. I just interpreted it a slightly different way. But I do enjoy what's going on here. And like I said, I'm very interested in hearing what else they're doing and how they're taking this idea and working with it. Not necessarily repeating what they're doing here, but finding different ways to implement all these different genres and this concept of jazzy electronic music. But those are just my thoughts on the Comet is Coming's Final Eclipse full version. This is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed this one. Anything that stood out to you, anything that you want to bring up, maybe I didn't touch on. You're like, hey, this was super important to me when I listened to it. Maybe you agree with me on things. Maybe you disagree with me on things. Let me know. We'll start a conversation down in the comments section. Above the comments, there's a description box. In there's a link for Linktree. Take you to this guy right here. There's links for all sorts of stuff here. You can join the Patreon, help support the channel, while also being able to vote on future songs and themes. You can follow me on Twitter. You can join the Discord community and talk with other people in the critical reaction community, and discuss music and all that. Really great place. You can buy some merch. You can do your own special selections. If you somehow missed the link in the description, there's another one here for Coffee and PayPal, whichever service you want to use. Also above the description box, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps this one up. This was a really great day. Got to listen to a song that I've heard a million times before and look at it in a new light. And then I got to hear this really interesting combination of genres I wasn't expecting. So, yeah, this was good. These are my favorite kinds of days. Really get a new understanding on music, whether I've heard it before or it's brand new. Anyways, I'm rambling here. Be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC. We're going to check out the cover of Raining Blood and a special selection. This whole 2-week thing of like doing the same song 2 days in a row is really throwing me off. Yes, we're going to see the cover of Raining Blood, and we're going to check out another special selection. All right, until next time, remember to be critical, never cynical about the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.